Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode to watch. Obviously, this kind of goes along with yesterday's episode because I didn't realize there were two episodes that came out, but I'm rectifying that now. Nevertheless, great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down, so let's break it down. So, obviously picking up right where the previous episode ended, we have, obviously Death and Sam talking, but then it's like, oh, it's not your time. And we get back to like where things currently are. And I thought that was kind of interesting because especially where the last episode ended. And I was like, oh, so we're starting at the end and working on the end is the beginning. But it's like, oh, actually well, I guess technically it is, but I thought it's like, oh, I thought we'd get to how he died. I figured he'd get saved or something, or maybe this situation the crossbow wouldn't kill him, but I thought at the very least that's always going to be, it's like how he ended up dying and where the story was, but it's like, no, he ended up being saved. Still doesn't mean it won't eventually circle back to that, because he was like, oh, you got here ahead of time, so we'll see. But the sergeant ended up sacrificing himself. I was like, oh, I guess because I thought he was a troll. I guess just because he has a rock body doesn't mean those can't pierce him. So the sergeant ended up dying. I was like, jeez. Cause we only learned obviously learned a little bit about some of his backstory and obviously his connection to Sam. And Sam was telling him not to do this. Why'd you have to go and save me again? And, and it's even sad because, Sherry is, carrying around a piece of him. And obviously that turns into a conversation later on why she's doing that. And for her, it's it brings her comfort, Because she had made some excuse earlier and been like, oh, because my crossbow was broken or whatever. Not wanting to actually admit the reason behind it. But obviously this situation hit everyone hard, because for one, jumping into the mix, and one of them dying like this, it's because for so long the Watchers, all they've done is watch. And so, obviously it hits Sam hard because he probably hasn't, that's probably more reason why he doesn't get involved in situations, because the last time something really went down was 20 years ago, and, the captain died because of that. So I think because of that, maybe that's why he was really, I don't want people mixed up in things because people are going to get hurt and potentially killed. But because of this, it spurs Sam on a little bit more. I also love that dude was performing his music, and it's literally tiny in the background the entire time until he gets to the lyrics, what's wrong with loving a horse or something. I even love Sam's just turning and listening, what? And I don't know whether he means just loving a horse in just a pet animal way, or does he mean literally loving a horse? I didn't know how to really necessarily interpret that. But it is that complicated thing where you have... like I said, you have two different characters. You have Lady Ramkin and you also have Carrot, who are both we got to do the right thing, try to go about things the right way. Lady Ramkin wants to kind of change everything. Carrot kind of does too, in the sense that he wants them to do more. It's this was in our jurisdiction. There's 6 people dead. There's so much damage to the city because a dragon went rampant and started burning everything down because Carcer was summoning it, but it was too much for him and it kind of backlashed on him. His eyes started turning red, he was getting his hands seemed like they were his flesh on his hands, and at least in the center, were burning. They also set up this interesting thing where Carrot was kind of questioning Sam because he actually read the reports, and he was he's wondering whether or not Sam actually let Carcer go. It's they were best friends and everything. I think the others already knew this story, but they were it's not our story to tell. It's not our business to dive into. I guess because Sam kind of stays out of their business, so they want to respect and do the same, especially because he's given, as Angua said last episode, he gave them a place, a place where people who have nowhere else to go can go, So I think because of that, they know, but obviously Carrot doesn't know the truth. We as the audience knew. But obviously it led this interesting situation where he's a little suspicious, because obviously it still doesn't answer the question of what happened to Carson. And we still aren't fully sure about that. I'm going to quickly throw it out there. I think what happened, I think he probably ended up time traveling. I think he got sent to the future. And I think that's why he looks the way he does, because that 20 years ago was, just a moment ago for him. Granted, I'm making an assumption on that part. I would assume that's because he later on shows that mark. He's I found basically a new group. bigger than the guilds, bigger than even the watch. That basically it's a symbol of a maze, saying that basically they kind of see every angle and every route throughout the maze. And because he even said that whole thing of like, there's no place in this world for you and me, just because he was like, he's seen it already. So that makes me think he's seen the future. And it's like, he knows what becomes of everything. And he's like, because of that, they're maybe potentially trying to rewrite this city's history. Maybe it doesn't just stop with the city. Maybe it starts, well, because in particular, he's trying to burn down the city because whatever group he's a part of is going to, I guess, give him the power. I don't know. I'm making this assumption. Another thought could just be like, whoever he is with imbued him with, I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, I'm more so sticking with the time travel thing for now, but we'll see whether anything becomes of that or not. We did actually kind of get a little, I actually had to correct some things I brought up last episode. One, I think I referred to the books series that this is based on, as Disco World. It's Disc World, because they also refer to it as like, because it's a literal disc. Like I said, I didn't get into it, but I think it's like a Disc World on top of something that's on top of something, like it's like giant turtles or something. Like I vaguely remember someone bringing that up. Like I said, I'm not going to say for sure because I'm not well versed in the series. But nevertheless, they also show like Arch Chancellor had, like, he was like, oh yeah, he discovered a spear world, like, oh, he discovered Earth, because they say at the beginning of last episode and this episode, in somewhere in like a secondhand dimension. So obviously it isn't the same universe as like, so that's just interesting to know, like obviously pointing out like, oh, this isn't like some alternate Earth or anything. Like, no, obviously this is a completely different dimension from, and the fact that they say secondhand makes you think it's supposed to be kind of like a reject dimension type of situation. But regardless, this episode also filled in some of the stuff I was confused about, like the tower, like where the whole Sam and Carcer thing went down. It's like, oh, that was actually the unseen university. And obviously also got to witness the wizards and stuff like that I was wondering about. I was like, because there's supposed to be like wizards running around. So now actually seeing the university and everything, I'm like, oh, there's very like Harry Potter elements to this, which is kind of interesting. It's a blend of like, it seems like, I mean, I've never watched it, but it seems very Game of Thrones meets Doctor Who meets God, what was I just saying? Harry Potter. What I also like is, touching on the whole wizard situation, we did get to meet the Arch Chancellor and kind of obviously get a little taste of the unseen university and kind of, get to see the more, like I said, more wizardry side of this world, because the Arch Chancellor is kind of regarded as being super powerful and stuff like that. Because, I mean, a lot of the stuff in this world, he's the one that crafted it. He's kind of a bit of a, I guess, I guess it would almost probably be like this world's equivalency to Merlin in a certain regard, I think. But the fact is that he would make a whole bunch of stuff, but basically everything he makes ends up having some drawback. Like the typewriters that basically explode when you press Y. Apparently his experiments made a whole city street disappear. He's like, no, that happened to be a coincidence. It was completely unrelated. So he just, it's kind of, and even his circumstances of, he tried to fix some kids swearing because like, it's like, oh, this mom didn't want to hear that profanity anymore. And, it ended up backfiring, so now he can no longer swear, which I love that bit, because it's just like anytime he tries to swear, it comes out like a trumpet sound. It's like, okay, that's really interesting. I even love the solution to it later on. It's like, okay, there's always a backside to every spell. It's like, so if you want to swear, why don't you try making a trumpet sound? And we see it later on when he makes a trumpet sound and it comes out like shit, like the word shit. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting, because at first I didn't understand it until I rewound it. I was like, oh, okay. Making a trumpet sound allows him to curse. It's like, if you make a trumpet sound when you try to curse, why not try to make a trumpet sound to actually curse? I just thought that was interesting. I wonder, would he have to make a different trumpet sound each time? Like, I wonder how does that work? Would you have to make a different trumpet sound each time to, a different one to be able to differentiate between the different swear words, Or, is it like, do you have to kind of make the sound in the form of what word you want to make? So you have to make a trumpet sound like the word ass or something. Like, how does that work? It's magic. I'm super overthinking it, but I find it so fascinating. But nevertheless, I love the whole situation where well, for one, Sam taking this investigation seriously. Obviously, Englewood was at first like, we this isn't our thing, because obviously Carrot's the one that's pushing for like the investigations and stuff like that. But even Sam kind of says like, we'll do it, but we're going to be smart about it. We're going to do it my way. We're going to keep our heads low. We're not going to cause too much trouble. It's like, not try to go too crazy with this. And then they go to the unseen university, and obviously Carrot's like, oh yeah, I read like this document and stuff like that. And it's just like, and I love Sam being like, besides, it was a public document. So it's not like they say anything that would and he was like, incriminate themselves. It's like, so also because he wanted to wake the dude up at the front. And then it's like, I love the Chancellor walks over and he's like, oh, this man, did none of you notice that this man had died? And I love that they were just, I thought he was just sleepy. Okay. I thought that was really interesting. Also, I guess this is also kind of reminds me a little bit of Harry Potter. Like the library being what it is, like the books, like rattling and kind of being alive like that. I was like, that was really interesting. But also them having that special room where everyone can understand each other. So like Englewood could understand Sherry, and Sherry could understand Englewood. Like you can read people. It's meant to be a room where like long lost languages, like you can translate stuff. So it's an interesting room. Obviously, they end up taking advantage of later on. Also, we learn how much of a dick the Art Chancellor is because, well, for one, we find out like slab and stuff is, not just a drug, but it's also used as fuel for spells and stuff like that, for like all the magic stuff that they do, which is interesting. Because now it's like, could you potentially have some connection to this Carcer thing? And I love that, like, it's like, like Sam has to be like, pretending like he's on top of things. It's like, we figured this whole thing out, even though it was mainly Carrot from reading like the minutes of like, the transcripts and stuff like that. And he's like, because we read the minutes. He's like, the minutes. Yeah. Also the fact, but the reason I was saying the Chancellor's kind of a dick is because, apparently it's like, they're sitting on someone. It's like, he talked about giving people tails, and the fact that you're sitting on someone that's actually a couch, like transforming people like that's very painful for them and stuff like that. I'm like, but I guess it's like that person was a dick, so he was being, I don't know. I was just like, but he was giddy about it. It just was the whole point. And that's even more reason why like Sam was kind of treading on light water around him, because it's once again not trying to stir up too much trouble, just trying to find out about Carcer. But obviously their plan is to sneak in there, go to that room, because the moment you go in there without permission, the alarms go off and everything, and they're planning to draw the Arch Chancellor there so that they can question him, like, because you'd be able to read him. There'd be no lying to him. And even later, and I thought it was kind of interesting because, like, Carrot's like, oh man, this could revolutionize like police work and stuff like that. But the room has a drawback. The librarian being the way he is because of that. Like, it's once again, the Art Chancellor constantly having backlashes to like everything he does. Obviously, the lady that's the janitor, we ended up finding out she was actually part of the crew that Carcer was a part of. In fact, that Sam was a part of. She was one of the people Sam was supposed to be breaking out that night 20 years ago, but he didn't, obviously. And for her, she's been working at the unseen university. And for her, it's a situation where she was treated as like, I'm just a janitor. But I think for her, she probably has like great potential because she's the one that kind of figured out, the Arch Chancellor situation about being able to swear. So it shows like for her, it's like her gifts and talent weren't recognized for whatever reason. I even loved home dude. It's like, when the Chancellor's like, when it's revealed her situation, he's like, don't worry, she'll be punished after she cleans the urinals. Tangents and all that aside, kind of going into another tangent, I guess. I thought I didn't bring them up last episode, but I should have. The goblins. Can other people understand the goblins? I don't know, especially because they're like, is the boss dead? I don't know. Maybe we kind of, do a union. He was like, no, I'm already married. It's like, no, not that kind of union. It's like, maybe we should. And then Carcer had sent them away when they were talking about pay and stuff like that. It's like, maybe we'll try again some other time. Like, I don't know whether anyone can actually understand the goblins or not. even at the beginning, that dude was kind of like during the like opening of the episode when like, you know, crossbows were flying and crossbow bolts were flying and everything. One of the goblins was like, "Oh, that's my wife." Like, I guess like had gotten struck or something like that. But it's interesting. Like, it seems like the only reason why they're working with Carcer because obviously they're kind of like the slave labor in this world, or at least in this city. And I guess they're trying to like, you know, it's like, oh, it's time, like working with Carcer is our way to like make our way in the world, I guess. Whatever the case may be. I just thought that was interesting. And, Angua, you know, it's a full moon. And so she ends up transforming and ripping through all the goblins there. I also love that whole bit with Lady Ramkin where it's like when Sam and Carrot ran into her and it was like, oh, like at least she didn't bring her dragon this time. She's like, I always learn from my mistakes and grow. She's like, that's why I brought an axe. And it's like, you can't be carrying around an axe. She's like, it's fine as long as I'm wearing a cloak. Because she's like, I can make an excuse like, oh, I was just chopping wood and I just happened to keep my axe on me. And then she uses it later on and she's like, oh, Chancellor, sorry, I got lost and I had just chopped some wood and I got lost. So that's why I had my axe. And she tried to pull it out the goblin's back. And she was just kind of like, I kind of didn't really think it through. I just kind of threw it and everything. We saw she had a whole bunch of weaponry because she was like, okay, like if she's like, if I take the axe, because she has a holster for everything, and it's like, but if I take a broadsword, I won't have any room for the mace. She's like, do you want to carry around the mace? And there was also that Sherry and Angua situation where she gives her like that I guess it's almost like a compass or whatever. Like it's a device that lets her know like, oh, like whether it's going to be cloudy. Obviously sucky for anyone that's afraid of a dragon, but great for a werewolf to kind of know the phases of like when things are going to go down, because that way she's always kind of perpetually scared, because she had brought it up earlier. Like if I'm out and about, like I'm the one that people are going to be, you know, in danger of, because she can't control it, you know? And so it's like, but also, you know, she asked Sherry, like, why are you afraid of the dark? She's like, I'm not necessarily afraid of the dark. I'm just afraid of what's in it. And I'm like, now, I'm assuming maybe that has something to do with her upbringing. Might also have something to do with, let's not forget, she can see ghosts that no one else can. So it's like, what's that about? You know, maybe there's elements to that, like, that there are a lot more things in the dark that maybe she can see that maybe other people can't, you know? But nevertheless, this episode was also a bit of growth for Sam in a regard that, you know, after kind of getting praised about like, oh no, like you know, you are the captain of the watch, you know, and it's like, because at first he was like, oh, that's nothing to be proud of. She's like, yeah, look at what you're able to accomplish. And he was just kind of like, yeah, you know, it's like, because it's been so long since they've actually, you know, done anything other than watch. So for him, it's like, he ends up explaining to Ramkin and Carrot the truth about what happened that night with Carcer. And he was like, I don't know whether it was me trying to be brave or whether it was my cowardice, but he's like, but from now on, we're no longer just going to watch. And it's like, yeah, they're both proud of him. And then it seems like, oh, he stopped, and it's like, oh, okay, that was a beautiful moment. And then the moment continues because he goes on this giant tirade, and it's just like, okay. And he's like, oh, you know, don't judge a book by its cover, and it's harder to blah blah blah. And Ramkin and Carrot are just like, wow, this is going and going and going. He's like, and now I'm done. It's like, okay, so can we get back to work now? But he's offering Ramkin a badge, because it's like, well, if you want to work with us and kind of change things, you're going to have that badge. And she's like, fine. Which she must have some reservation against the watch on some level for her to be like, I would never be caught dead wearing one of those. I guess what the watch represents or something. But then we have Carrot saying like he looked into, because he wanted to know, like, obviously she's carrying around a dragon and stuff like that. It's like what other infractions she might have caused, and he learned a little bit about her, and he's passing that on to Sam. So I'm assuming it has something to do with that. Because at first I was almost like, his captain that died, like, is he related to Lady Ramkin? I assume not, because I feel like he would have put two and two together in that regard. But I thought that was interesting in that. I'm wondering what that's all about. Like, maybe there's some deep family history between the watch and her family. Whatever the case may be. Something else I should also note, and I thought was kind of fascinating, the janitor that's working with Carcer. What I thought was interesting is a conversation she had with Sam. She was like, yeah, you were always different from the rest of us. We didn't kill because We only killed because if we didn't kill, we didn't eat, and you never ate. I don't know how to necessarily interpret that. I guess it's like you were someone that was, you somehow managed to kind of skate around ever having to kill anyone. Now that also begs the question. Technically, I guess Carcer was always going to be that one, because I mean, granted, we don't know everything that's going down in the past 20 years, but he's probably never killed anyone before. Well, he definitely hadn't, and so I don't know what that's supposed to imply. Like they killed and he kind of ate because they killed, or is that just kind of like? That's what I took that as. I mean, the statement mainly was to make it seem like he never did any of the killing. Like, we got our hands bloody and dirty, but you never did. Especially, and when the time came, but it seemed like, because I interpreted it kind of like maybe they shared some of their food with him so he wouldn't have to do that. But it's like when the time came for you to pay us back, you weren't there for us. You didn't bust us out of prison like you should have. So that was kind of interesting. Hopefully we get a little more insight into that. Like, obviously, Carcer and Sam's situation, like the circumstances around it, and, you know, more about what's going down in the 20 years. Obviously, you know, kind of what I wanted, you know, what I brought up last episode, expanding upon this world, you know, Discworld in general, but this city in particular, the ins and outs of things, how, you know, everything works. Because obviously we met like the head of like the that lady, the head of the Assassin's Guild, I think. Because when I initially saw the Arch Chancellor, I assumed he was the head of the Alchemist Guild or something, but turned out not to be the case. But regardless, tangents and all, a lot of interesting things went down. I'm curious to see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.